Hello and welcome to the ninth episode of Dystopedia. I'm your host Matt Davidson and I'm once again joined by my colleague Andrew Hodgson.
How are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm pretty well, Andrew. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. What have you been up to this week?
Oh, I've been on quite the adventure this week. I went to a stage live roleplay Dungeons and Dragons extravaganza at the Sydney Opera House, and it was quite the experience. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What dragged you there?
Well, a couple of my work colleagues, they're into the, Dungeons and Dragons, and I've always been intrigued by it, so I thought I'll give it a go and see what it was like, and it's quite a bit of a fun experience. Like, they split you up into different, classes, and you got to vote via your phone of what direction the party went, and they actually did, live rolling the dice and stuff, so how that went is how your character went, so it was quite the experience. I mean, some of the humour was a bit... Yeah, bit too much for me and
so
stuff.
There was a lot of audience participation, was there?
Yeah, there was, and yeah.
And if I know you love that, don't you?
Oh no! Every time I was like, "Oh, we need a volunteer." I'm like, "Oh, duck, just run!" Yeah, but it was cool. Like, they did things like they had the cocktails named after potion. It's called a potion, and they put a bit of whiskey and rum in it and mixed it up, and yeah, it was a cool event, and it was a good location too at the Opera House. And yeah, some people took it a bit more serious than I did, but no, overall it was a good experience.
Would you go again?
Yeah, I'd go again, but if I went, I need more drinks, so I think.
Are you worried your friends are going to be listening and they might... you try not to offend them?
No, see how that goes. Yeah, my work colleagues, no, they won't be listening, but no, it was a fun night. It was good going out with them, and they really got into it, so no, it was definitely a good experience. So
yeah, cool.
Something different. Always good to mix things up, yeah.
Yeah, it is, particularly with doing this.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, we were drinking back on the the staple of the podcast on the Green Coast Crisp from Stonewood. So how smooth is this? I forgot how good this stuff is. Oh.
It is. We needed to go off and drink other things to come back and appreciate it.
Yeah, the grass isn't always green on the other side.
No,
no pun intended.
But it's still supporting Australian beer.
Oh, especially in these times, mate. With old Trumpy done all the tariff releases, so. Got to support your local country now,
Well, that's right. That's right. A bit of nationalism.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the theme of today's episode.
It is very much so, yeah. Very, could be going down those avenues with the way things are going at the moment, right?
We could.
Yeah. We hope not, but you never know what the future holds. But, well, in today's episode, we're talking about the Wolfenstein series, but more closely the Wolfenstein New Order onwards kind of time frame. So, because that's the one where it kind of really delves into dystopian themes and alternate history.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were umming and ahhing what to do before this, weren't we? But this is the true dystopia of the series, because up until the New Order, which we're going to start with, it pretty much follows the same timeline as our universe with the Second World War. I mean, obviously there's some occultish happenings and all that sort of shit in Wolfenstein with some of the Wolfenstein tropes, but the universes align, I guess, right? So
yeah, and from what I've seen from old school videos of the older games, it seems like it's just a run and gun shooter set in a world where you're just fighting Nazis. There's no real... I mean, there would be depth to it, I guess. I haven't really looked into it, but where it really feels the story and the narrative is a big focus of the 2014 series onwards.
Yeah, look, I mean, the original DOS games and stuff, it's very hard to put a narrative into those with where gaming was at the time, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Speaking of that, it is funny, I'm watching the videos of it, you just see this little creature on the screen walking around. It's got the Nazi swastika on it walking around. He's like,
so he's the bad guy.
He must be the bad guy. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But there's a bit of stealth to it too. I was reading where you're escaping out of Wolfenstein Castle, and then you have to put on a disguise as a Nazi official. That's why your character has a swastika on it. I was getting confused. I'm like, oh, okay, so there must be some stealthy thing to it or something. Yeah.
I read that actually in the research of this. They were talking about I guess we look back now and think it's quite primitive, but at the time it was doing things you'd kill a Nazi guard, you'd take his uniform, and if the other guards found him, they'd immediately start looking for you. Revolutionary in the early 90s.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well, that was back in the 1980s, but later on, yeah, definitely. Well, you'd say that the one that really set the tempo and defined a generation in a way was Wolfenstein 3D, which came out in 1992. I remember you and me were talking about it. We're like, oh yeah, that was the game that's a bit of a Doom clone, right? But actually this came out before Doom, which I didn't realize. I'm like, oh wow, that's crazy.
So my ignorance, I thought it was a Doom clone. There we are.
Yeah, no, but I think I did too, because back then everyone always talked about Doom. That was the game to play, the first-person shooter that really revolutionized that genre and inspired many great first-person shooters down the track. Like your GoldenEyes and Call of Duties and Medal of Honors and things like that. So. That's the first time where you kind of really get to see Blazkowicz in all his glory running around the castle.
Yeah, well, actually, there is some theory online looking as you do when we were doing the research, and you do get sidetracked a bit. Something explaining how like Doom Guy, so they call him Doom Guy in the first. You know how you just see his face is
Yeah,
almost like the health bar is like a descendant of Blazkowicz or something. So I'm like, oh, there we are.
it's in the same universe somewhere.
In the same universe, it probably is. You know?
Yeah, I think it's the same, pretty much the same developers, right? They seem very similar. Yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
so it makes sense. And then the game then like kicked up, like it reinvented itself back in what 2001 it was, because it was Return to Castle Wolfenstein. That from memory.
That's the first one I remember, but I remember watching a mate play it because at the time, from memory, it was all about Medal of Honor. And then there was this game, and I'm like, oh yeah, what's this? And it was like all this Nazi occult stuff happening. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. But I don't think I just remember playing it at a mate's house and watching him. Obviously, it never. I don't think it had a influence on me because I never really played it after that. But probably before I was into the war at that time, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny. I do remember seeing the game cover art of like EB Games or something as a kid, and you just see it from a distance. You just think, oh, it's just another generic war game or something. I wouldn't have thought it was this alternate history World War II Nazi thing where you're fighting them and occultist stuff as well. Because having like my first experience with Wolfenstein is playing from 2014 onwards and going back to it, seeing the other stuff, I'm like, oh, it's very much into the supernatural and the occult and the using spells and magic and stuff like that and zombies and things. Yeah,
Yeah, it was playing on all that conspiracy theory stuff around, and like turning it up to 11. You know,
Yeah.
that sort of shit when you're watching like the History Channel at 3 a.m. when you've been on the piss.
Oh
all
yeah,
day.
ancient aliens.
You're
Yeah,
like-
yeah.
You know, it's like, is this history or conspiracy? What the fuck's going on here?
I didn't South Park take the piss out of that once. Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's the South Park reference.
Yeah.
What's that History Channel Thanksgiving? Or whatever it was?
Yeah. Like, did you know that the landing at Plymouth was actually done by aliens or something?
Yeah,
Like, yeah. It's
that's
just,
when you're like, sorry, is this the History
Channel?
Channel? What's
Yeah.
going on here?
I wanted to learn a bit about a bit of American history, a bit of what happened in World War II. Why are we going to outer space? Something. Yeah. As we always say, don't question the plot.
That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, as we further go on to like the timeline of Wolfenstein, it goes into, I think a couple of expansions came out, like Wolfenstein Enemy Territory that came out a couple of years later, and then a mobile game came out which I'd never heard of actually. It came out, I think it was published by EA Mobile, and it was called Wolfenstein RPG, and that's around the times where the smartphones were starting to really kick off.
Yeah.
The Apple and Androids, and I remember seeing some gameplay footage of it just like earlier, and yeah, it looked a bit primitive, like it's very blocky and walking around a corner. And I mean, I guess it's kind of a cool concept doing a role playing Wolfenstein universe, but yeah, very, very limited for a mobile game though, because it's got limited technology. Then a year later, we got the 2009 game Wolfenstein, which it's funny, I do remember seeing the cover art again in like EB Games or JB Hi-Fi, and it has that like a skeleton like with like shooting lightning out. I don't know if you've seen it. Yeah. Listeners, look it up. Like you've probably seen it before, but it's funny when I see that. I don't think a Nazi game or killing Nazis or anything like that. I just think a zombie game or some undead thing.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really encapsulate what kind of game I would think it would be, kind of thing. So it kind of just, and also too, just on that, like it came out as I said earlier, 2009. That's peak Call of Duty time. So it definitely would have fallen on the wayside, not really captured the zeitgeist of the time, and everyone was just playing first-person shooters back then, and the online lobbies, and so you can see why it didn't really take off.
Yeah, but in actual fact, look, in the context of today's discussion, it's an important game. It introduces Death's Head as a character, and Carolyn, and then the Kreisau Circle, which is like the resistance movement. So like, I think that's all we really need to touch on with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly like that nod back to old Wolfenstein, where it's heavily focused on the occultish sort of side of it, but as we get into later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this
technology.
I guess like games did have storylines and plots and things like that beforehand, but it's before that, I'd say in 2013, when The Last of Us came out, that's when story narrative driven games really took off and became really part of like what people wanted. They wanted like a cinematic experience and great characters and dialogue going forward and voice acted and things like that. So
yeah,
you can see why when we're focusing on the New Order onwards, where that's really, it goes in that direction. They were kind of given like free reign to make their own mark on it, the developers. So yeah, I was reading, what I was saying earlier, the developers, like they got, I think it's called Machine Games, the one who acquired the rights to it, ID Software as well, and they basically were, as I said earlier, got free reins to do what they wanted with it. And they're kind of inspired by the game that came out in '92, which they had similar kind of license to do what they wanted. So they wanted to set it in an alternative history, you know, 20 years removed, the Nazis won the war, and yeah, build upon that, and then really get Blazkowicz as a character, get him like having dialogue and inner thoughts,
A
not
bit of depth.
bit of depth to him, not
Yeah.
just be this meathead just killing zombies left, right, and center kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, well, they actually they revolutionized it, really, didn't they? Because it was a real struggling IP before they come on board.
yeah. It just seemed to be disjointed, right? It just seemed like they go in one direction, then go a bit over the top, and then they reset for another 5 years, and then do it again in another way. But this one, it felt like, oh no, they had a real a plan and direction where they wanted to go.
Mm.
Yeah, and very story driven. So
Yeah,
we see, yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, so before we go into the actual, like the meat and potatoes of the whole of the game, of both games, first and second, the creators of the game, they're a Swedish studio. They took inspiration, and you can see its fingerprints all throughout. Is The Man in the High Castle,
Yes.
and this is not the TV series too. This is before that came out.
Okay.
So it's the book by Philip K. Dick. So I think he also wrote the Androids Must. Yeah, it's another one. It's one that inspired Blade Runner. But yeah, so you can see.
Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
That's the one. Yeah, thank you. Yep, there was that one, and you can see it has those. That one's focused on America divided into one half is conquered by the Nazis, and then by the other half is by the Japanese. You can definitely see its inspiration and its fingerprints and elements of it in the game, and yeah, they took that and then they wanted to. They went on the tropes of Nazis gaining this ultimate technology and using 1960s aesthetics and implementing that, and then imagining a world where they controlled London and Paris and then America as well. And no, you really feel that, as I said, like they got their free reign to do what they wanted in that kind of way. So it's really cool they went down that path.
Yeah, and I love the attention to detail of things, like particularly, and we'll get into it a bit more later. But there's a particular bit the depth of the game. When you wake up in the hotel in Berlin,
Yeah,
and then you see the People's Hall, which would have been the Volkshall, which I think was an Albert Speer in
that's a big golden dome, right?
big dome. It was meant to be a fit of 180,000 people. You see concepts for it online, because Berlin was meant to be the brains of the Thousand-Year Reich. It was the centerpiece of those, like they was going to call it Germanica, and it was like a world capital. And you see it, and then you get in the hotel, you're like, Jesus Christ, and that's the bit in the game where you're like, wow, like the detail. But then you see like all these technological marvels of like blimps and all this sort of stuff. So it's like that whole it's like Hitler's dream on absolute steroids.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
All the rhetoric they always went on about how the pioneering race and this Marvel society, and it's all going to be prosperous for the white man and the white people, and and then because it was Hitler, they're all obsessed with those like Roman columns and stuff, like those marble arches, and
it goes into that whole the whole racial purity argument with Hitler, who as we know, he thought the Aryans were the superior race and they come from superior stock, and it's like it's mythology but pseudo history and all this sort of shit to kind of make it look like that. Idolize the Holy Roman Empire and the Greeks and these great civilizations, because as we know, the ancient Germanic tribes were primitive as fuck, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
there's nothing really special about them.
They're controlled by the Romans.
yeah. So it's like, we'll just forget about that.
Yeah. Well, from now onwards, that's where we're superior. It's like we turn a blind eye to that conveniently. Yeah.
Yes, pretty much. Actually, there's a bit of stuff in the Anna Nurbe, but we'll get into that a little bit later, because we'll probably get sidetracked before we even start reading the plot.
Exactly. Yeah, it always happens with us, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I guess another important thing to talk about before we get into it is the of any video game, right? It's the gameplay, right, in general. So it feels like they're inspired by like Arnold Schwarzenegger style, like all guns blazing. You can kill Nazis left, right, and center in the most graphic and detailed way you can.
It's a weirdest game in the sense that you feels like you are basically single-handedly taking on the whole Reich.
Yeah,
but yeah. And then it grounds you in this like place where like the depth of the character, and you really like feel for Blazkowicz, and as you get into later, you see his upbringing, and it really confronts like issues of fascism, racism, and
kind of like holding a mirror up to society today in a way. Yeah,
it's so clever, but never ever does it feel preachy.
No, it doesn't.
So one credit I can give this game, it never feels preachy.
No, definitely not. And it gets like, I do have some criticisms of the game, like it's as like gameplay itself, but overall, like, it feels very smooth, very to the point. Like the weapon variety, the tactics you can use. You can go in stealth. You can go in all guns blazing. It lets the player decide how it wants to go about it. So, and it feels like really satisfying when you kill them, and like kill the Nazi, like you stab them from behind, or we get an RPG and just blow them to bits. And I like to how with the technology they get, how it has those like those Panzer like panther things, like those are tiger things that come after you.
Oh yeah, the Panzerhunds.
Panzerhunds, yeah, they're so freaky as well, and you're just like, oh, so yeah. I reckon at this stage, yeah, if we could get into the plot of the first game and go from there.
Yeah, let's start with the New Order, and what we'll just do sort of a basic summary because there's every chance this one probably goes into 2 episodes.
See how we go, yeah.
Yeah. We'll start with this, and then we'll read the plot of the New Colossus afterwards. What I wouldn't mind doing is actually giving a nod to the Old Blood, because even though Old Blood came out in 2015 after this, chronologically it's set before.
It's a prequel, right?
Yeah, it's a prequel. Essentially, they just did a Rogue One, right?
Yeah.
The whole game is to show how Blazkowicz got the plans for...
Sets the events up, yeah.
Sets the events of the New Order up. So he gets the plans to Death Head's compound, and then the Allies make their assault in 1946.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all we need to mention with the Old Blood, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Great game, but
It
more
is.
of a nod to the old ones.
Yeah, because it was a standalone game, it felt like it should have been DLC or something, not an actual standalone in the series, you know, like it's very short as well. So
Yeah.
basically it's a glorified DLC, isn't it?
Yeah, still good though.
Still fun, yeah.
All right, so Wolfenstein: The New Order. So the New Order is set after the end of World War II, in an alternate universe where the Axis powers won World War II. In 1946, as the Nazis expand their regime over the world, OSA agent B.J. Blazkowicz is sent to assassinate General Death's Head as part of a last all-out effort by Allied airborne and commando forces. The mission is a failure, and after the unit is slaughtered by Nazi forces, Blazkowicz barely escapes the compound, sustaining a critical head injury, which renders him unconscious and subsequently puts him in a coma. In 1960, 14 years after, BJ finds himself settled in an asylum, unaware of the events that took place during his coma, and about to be executed by the Nazis who have ordered the asylum liquidated. Awakened into full strength, Blazkowicz fights his way out of the building, escaping with a wounded nurse, Anya. BJ locates the resistance and helps them fight the Nazis, dismantling them and ultimately crippling their dominance around the world.
Yeah, wow. That's sums up the first game pretty well, doesn't it?
It's succinct, but as I say, there's probably going to be a bit to talk about on this one, so I reckon that's...
Well, when you first play the game, like it basically just throws you straight to the action, right? So you're on the plane, you're going towards the Death's Head's lair, or his big...
Well, it's his Baltic Sea fortress,
basically, yeah. So you're in there, you're storming the place, and then you're thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to get the victory now, and then all of a sudden you get captured, and then Death's Head gives you like the Sophie's choice right at the start, where you can choose Fergus or Wyatt. So who did you choose out of curiosity?
Fergus.
I think I chose Wyatt to keep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so
you know what, like, and I know that was a bit of a trope at the time, that whole choice thing. You know, games are becoming interactive, but it's still within how long is that? Maybe 15, 20 minutes that mission goes for.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
It gives you like it really in that time does a good job of building up the characters. I like developing them to that point where you're like, oh, I don't want to like. You don't want to make that choice if you're watching, because I think Wyatt saves your ass, Fergus saves your ass.
Yeah, and it just throws you into that kind of choice, and you're just like, I want to sacrifice myself, but like, don't make me choose, you know? It's so rough, yeah. And then just how sadistic Death's Head as well, and he's like,
he's a great character.
Oh, he's like,
you know when his face shows up at the window, and then Wyatt's like, oh, that's him.
It's
yeah.
It's a bit of a jump scare, like holy shit.
Yeah.
Well, I love the attention to detail as well with Death's Head's face. It's got those marks on it from, like, you know, where the Nazis used to do, like, fencing training as part of the thing. And then a lot of the generals and stuff all have these fencing scars on their face. So he's got that.
There we are.
Yeah, it's like a little nod. Like, it just shows the research they put into it. Just even little details like that.
Doesn't surprise me, yeah.
Yeah, and he fits that character and that kind of... you should imagine him in Hitler's Inner Circle, right? Like, how cruel and sadistic he is, and then that's when you first get you see the super soldiers, right? Where they're kind of holding the two characters down, and it sets the tone of like, oh yeah, the Nazi technology is on like another level now. It's not an even playing field, is it?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And then old Death's Head does the Dr. Evil and just assumes walks out.
Very convenient, for the plot, wasn't it? Yeah. I'll say the game is full of this kind of.
It is full,
as you say, Deus Ex Machina moments, right?
Yeah. But equally, Wolfenstein is kind of self-aware and takes the piss out of itself. Well, I certainly think so too.
Oh no, that's what I'm saying. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger tropes, right? It's got that thing. Yeah.
But this is the interesting thing. You mentioned the turning of the tide. So you look at a bit of the research. I wanted to know how Germany won the war in this in this game. So supposedly, like as I mentioned, so our timeline and the Wolfenstein timeline are like aligned. So the war starts in 1939 with the invasion of Poland. It pretty much goes the same, but you've got Death's Head conducting experiments. The Death's Head's rising to power. He's conducting experiments between 1941 and 1944, pushing the boundaries of bioengineering, live testing, all that stuff. We know what the Nazis were doing in live testing. They had no qualms about using live subjects from the concentration camps. We've mentioned in previous episodes the Mengele and he's doing his live autopsies and giving diseases and see how long someone would last. Just real sick shit, right?
Oh yeah.
But this in this, so he basically in that time, so he's in that whole Nazi thing of the occult and secret societies. They find Dachi Shud technology. I hope I pronounced that right. You know the secret society in it?
Yeah, you find out like when you rescue the guy from the concentration camp later on. But he's the one. He's one of the members. Isn't he? Like it's a secret society, and I think they're Jewish, aren't they? From what the game says. Yeah. So I think that's the irony of it. Yeah, they're using Jewish technology to complete this Aryan race, society. Yeah.
The irony of it is that, and it's sort of established that Death's Head doesn't care. He's like almost anti-Semitic. You know what I mean? And I'm like, when I'm watching it, I'm listening. Is this sort of a play on the Nazi regime was always doomed to fail because of that ideological blindness?
Yeah.
You know what? Like you think of one of the prime examples of losing the atomic bomb race. The thing that fucked them up was the actual purging of Jewish scientists. I mean, the brightest minds in the regime were Jewish. So at one point, so when Hitler came to power in 1933, a lot of them left, some were killed, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They went from like basically the hub of the world in knowledge to
the forefront,
just to being absolutely isolated. And it was their own ideology that did them.
Yeah.
So it's almost like Death's Head represents this sort of, I guess if Germany didn't go that way, he kind of represents like that pure, like, he obviously aligns with the regime, but he draws a line.
Well, it's kind of like he's using it as a vessel to do what he wants, right? So it's giving him the ultimate power to experiment.
Yeah.
And
he's like, I'm not blinded by your ideology. I don't care. If it works, it works.
Yeah, I just want ultimate power. I want ultimates, to do what I want to push the boundaries of science for my evil doings, right? So, it's
not so like you see with this invasion stuff obviously starts in 1946. So where in the game I think the war turns is D-Day, so June 6, 1944. So everything's basically the same until D-Day, but it's a catastrophic defeat for the Allies.
Because due to the technology, right? That's what kind of
his technology came to the forefront basically. So this like newspaper, when you do those bloody what are those little gather missions? I'll go and find my necklace or some shit.
Yeah, that's one of my criticisms of the game. But like you'd be in the middle of a mission or middle of a level, and then they'll ask you to examine something, like, and then you look there and it'd be like a newspaper clipping saying, 1945 or whatever, like this happened, and
that's what I love when it pads out the universe.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like, these little I wouldn't say they're Easter eggs, but they're kind of like little plot devices, right? You're setting the narrative in the tone of what's happened.
Well, you sit there for hours looking around, what's going on here? And one of the clippings actually says, like, June 6, 1944, it's Death Day for the Allies, 146,000 or 150-odd thousand deaths and only 89 German losses. Like, probably propaganda numbers, right?
Of course, yeah.
But like, it was all Death's Head's doing, basically. Which turned the tide of the war.
So he's the catalyst, right? So
pretty much. Well, it's even it's established like he's so influential to the Nazi war machine. This is sort of why you go and get those plans in old blood, and this is why you're in the first mission. So like they're basically like, we cut the head off the snake. That's it. We stop him.
Yeah, this will win the world. Yeah. So win the world. So win the war. Sorry. Yeah. So unfortunately, we're not successful in defeating Death's Head at his lair. So. No. We get in the time machine and fast forward, was it 14 years into the future? So
into
1960.
1960, yeah.
In a Polish asylum, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Well, as Blazkowicz, does his Arnold Schwarzenegger escape and jumps out the building off the castle. He gets shrapnel stuck in his head, isn't it?
He does, yeah.
And it's ingrained into his skull and knocks him into a coma. And I don't know how someone saves him. I assume I
think it's a Polish resistance, or he gets saved by a boat or something like that.
Yeah. And then you see him as a vegetable, basically, in a wheelchair for the next 14 years of his life. And that's where he's kind of like looking after him as the head nurse and mentoring him. And then you see like he's conscious in a way, but he can't react to anything.
Yeah, there's flashes of things.
Flashes and stuff. So you're seeing sometimes Nazis coming in and coming out, doing
What's cool is you see there's a whole bit when he's talking to the doctor and which is the nurse Anya's father, and it's saying a point like that the human experiments. So like he's sort of sitting there. It's like no, I'm caring for these patients, and they're all like mentally ill and that sort of thing. And like the death's head needs them for for experiments. So they're taking them from the asylum,
basically like livestock, right?
Yeah, he's like, I need to look after these are my patients. Like, no, these are worthless. But they'll be useful to the Reich in this way. And it's that whole like again the attention to detail.
Well, it's using their ideology on them too, like to manipulate. To save them, so they say, like, oh no, we're using it for the greater good, so leave them for now. But they're actually all they're doing is delaying them taking them out, basically, aren't they? Yeah,
yeah, and it's just that it's like, well, look, we don't know it's 1960 yet.
Yeah,
it's this whole thing of like a Nazi-run world, like it's really sadistic, really cruel, and then you find it's that whole like it's the purity thing and the national body being like sort of cured of all these how would they call them? Like dependence in society.
Yeah,
and we shouldn't have to pay to.
Well, the second and third class citizens, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're mentally handicapped. The best thing to do is put them down.
Yeah, they're a drain.
Why should the state pay? It's that whole real fascist like.
Yeah, because it's all about the purity and the best and the brightest. They're all coming. They need to be the pillars of society. We don't need these undesirables.
Well, yeah, it's essentially social engineering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very very morbid, isn't it?
But, well, it's like that like twisted sort of Darwinism. That whole like it's survival of the fittest and all that sort of stuff. But just twisted to this sort of demented ideology.
Yeah, and even what we saw before World War II even kicked off when you're saying at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, and then with Jesse Owens as the famous runner, and he ended up beating all these apparently these superior white Aryans in the running, and then Hitler was obviously really pissed off about it, and it's just like kind of defeats the whole purpose of this kind of engineered of how
called his bluff,
but how where's the superiority genetics and superior race, and then they're getting blown away in the running and stuff. So he's like, but now they're all caught up, but then they always thought they were more intelligent and superior in those ways. So
yeah, and I think it's important to mention it wasn't just Nazi Germany that was like in these eugenics programs and like these forced sterilization. It wasn't just Nazi Germany that were implied, but there was forced sterilization programs in Britain, in America.
Oh yeah, no, the psychiatric
Sweden.
Stuff. Yeah, it was a lot different back then. Yeah,
and it's sort of easy to sort of say because of you can associate it with the Nazi regime, but this was genuinely a worldview.
Yeah, well, was it lobotomy? That was a big thing, right? Back in those days. Anytime that someone showed aggression or any sign of depression or anxiety, they was like, oh, just lobotomize them, just... And they'll sort them out and like cutting out their lobar cortex, I think it is.
Yeah.
And then it affects their ability to do anything. You're just like, fuck, it's so sadistic and cruel. And it's not reversible either. So you're just like... Sorry, back to the scene though. But I played the game again recently, and I actually just beat it a couple of days ago. And that first scene really stuck with me when you're in the asylum where they decide to shut down the asylum.
Old shutdown.
Yeah, the shutdown. They're being cleaned out, and then you just see the soldiers just going up to the patients with their Lugers and going bang, bang.
What's clinical,
cold. Just like cold and bang, and then by the miracle of the gods, I don't know how it happened, but somehow Blazkowicz came out of his coma.
And he's still built like a brick shit
house. Yeah. How do you keep up those bloody weight trainings while he's in the coma for 14 years? Oh, God, he is a genetic marvel, isn't he?
He is.
Maybe that's what all the Nazis were trying to aspire to be, like Blazkowicz.
Oh, yeah.
But that's when the game really kicks off, and then you grab the knife, I think, or scalpel, and you stab the first Nazi, and it just goes into the full on, once again, Arnold Schwarzenegger mode. You're just like beast mode, you're just mowing people down and having, grabbing their weapons and going on from there. Yeah. But it's also too, the atmosphere of the game, the attention to detail, where you're seeing like the Mercedes-Benz cars pull up and outside the asylum, and then the uniforms and the Nazi logos. It just shows they've really put a lot of research and I wouldn't say love isn't the right word because you can't really love Nazi stuff, but like it's the attention to detail of things where you notice like they're wearing the swastika armbands and the uniforms look exactly the same. And I like too how all the Nazi soldiers have like helmets on. We can't see their faces, so it really shows like it's the Nazi block, right? It's a faceless kind of regime now. Where it's you don't know who could be behind the mask. It could be your neighbor, it could be your friend, it could be someone down the road. You don't know. So
it's no emotion.
No emotion. Yeah, I mean, at this time they're controlling the whole world, right? So. Yeah, it could be Polish, could be Russians, it could be British. You don't know who they are. It's just the Nazis, aren't they? Yeah. So No, it really sets the tone for that. And yeah, then it goes on towards the next part where you go to Anya's grandparents, and then yeah, you capture that one of that Nazi. Is it not he's not a general, but he's like a Open-Gruppenführer or something like that. Yeah,
you bloody
kill him and stuff. Yeah, you start torturing him and
the chainsaw scene. Yeah,
well, that's when Blazkowicz realizes, oh shit, I'm in 1960. And he's like, take me to I'm a US Marine. Take me to my local commander. Like,
well, I think they say to him like the war's over. He's like, no, it's not. There's still Nazis out there.
Yeah,
he can't fathom that.
He hasn't comprehended. Yeah, and that's like kind of like the first time as a player you're awakened to, oh no, this is actually completely under Nazi rule, the whole world. It's not just like one section or one location. It's actually the whole entire.
Yeah,
the war's been over for 14 years. Like it's
yeah.
They control like the destiny of the world now. So
well, and I think at this point they mention so the war ended with a atomic bomb that dropped on New York in 1948. America surrendered.
Yeah.
So obviously in this timeline, the Nazis actually do find the atomic bomb. I mean, look in our timeline. And I guess with the benefit of hindsight now, we know that the Nazis actually got nowhere near the atomic bomb, right?
No.
But you know, who the Allies weren't to know, hence that Manhattan Project and everything like that. Ironically, and we've just already alluded to it, the reason they didn't get anywhere near it is because of the purges of Jewish scientists. Like the brightest minds were pretty much pushed out or purged, went straight into sort of Allied hands, and
ironically, they handicapped themselves, didn't they, the Nazis?
Yeah. But even still, I mean, we sit there, and I think I briefly mentioned even in last week's episode. What did we do last week?
There Will Come Soft Rains.
Yeah, I mentioned. I said we don't give
Truman.
No. Einstein enough credit.
Einstein, okay,
yeah, we don't give Einstein enough credit for actually getting out when he did. Which, look, I still maintain that, but he would have never been allowed to practice anyway, because it would have sort of been sort of written off as like Jewish knowledge and all this just Jewish sort of
influence. They're going to undermine us, or anyway.
What would they know? They wouldn't know what the Aryans know, and yeah, it's like there was funding put into the Nazi nuclear bomb, but it was sort of, I guess, it was misguided and handicapped, as you say, by like this.
Yeah, the best and brightest minds not being able to work on it.
Yeah, and they didn't have the funding that.
And like, what incentive would they have to work on it anyway? Like, why would you want to help them achieve this ultimate power and destruction? If I was a Jewish scientist, they captured them and got them to work on that, you're not going to do your best effort, are you?
No,
you'd rather sabotage it and then let them, get away with it, because it's only going to make things worse.
Yeah. So I think it's quite clear. So I did a bit looking in the Wolfenstein universe. It's established that the US does have the bomb, but they have no air superiority. So they couldn't have done it.
They can't reach the targets. Yeah.
Whereas in this world, obviously it's helped by Dachi Shud technology from Death's Head. So that's the only way they would have been able to get it, because they didn't have the mines there, right? They were all pretty much funding they were overdoing the Manhattan Project essentially.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was interesting. Another thing actually, like looking at like how they won the war and everything. There's even newspaper clippings talking about the betrayal of Italy. So Germany didn't want to actually share Europe. They actually betrayed Italy, so they invaded Italy in like 1948.
Yeah, interesting.
It's established that Japan is allowed to coexist with.
Well, they control like the Asian region, right?
Yeah, which I thought that was a good talking point in the sense, like obviously we know the Nazi war, but I don't believe in reality that would have been allowed to happen, right? I think at some point they would have.
I think for the time being it would have been, but then once they established themselves in the other sectors of the world, then it would have clashed their heads, and then the Nazis would have attacked them then.
Yeah, that's what I think. But yeah, it's established so they've been coexisting for 14 years or something like that. Well,
you can see the man in the high castle influence then, yeah.
12 years, where they sort of, look, there was a clear hierarchy, sort of Hitler placing Aryans at the top. I think like Japan was considered honorary Aryans, but that was only for diplomatic reasons during the war. So it was an alliance of sort of necessity, right?
Yeah.
I think Hitler and many high-ranking Nazis saw them as like non-Europeans as inferior, as we know.
Of course, yeah.
There was respect for the Japanese from Hitler, but I think it was from like their military...
Their tenacity, right,
their tenacity, I think their victory over the Russians in 1905 and the Japan-Russo War was a big part of it. But he actually still... I think he believed they were biologically capable, but... culturally capable but biologically inferior.
But Hitler was more focused on Europe, wasn't he? That was his main objective. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, he was. I just think after the war they probably would have come to blows over like probably in like resource-rich Siberia and the Middle East.
Trade, yeah.
It would have probably become like a Cold War like with the Soviets and the Americans. It was all well and good when we needed you, but the ideologies were never gonna.
Yeah,
they're never going to coexist.
Well, that's the thing with fascism, right? It always kind of needs an enemy, right? So
Yeah.
like, once they say they wiped out all the American, Russian, other European factions and groups, yeah, who's the next enemy then? It would have to be Japan, logically, right?
Yeah. One thing, I might actually read a passage from Mein Kampf.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
we're definitely not going to get monetized now.
And I want to sort of caveat this with like, I only have this to sort of. I'm not endorsing Hitler. I'm not endorsing the Nazi Party. I have this to purely understand. As I think we've mentioned before, this historically we've mentioned like how much into the Second World we are. To me, to actually understand.
No, it's important to understand his mindset and why. Then to learn from it and to ensure these things don't happen in the future, right?
Yeah, and I just feel like, look, I shouldn't have to say it, but I'm going to because of like what's going on in the world and everything. But yeah, it's you look for warning points in history. There's a rise of like right wing parties at the moment. So you're looking at it. It's you're learning more when you understand why someone did what they did.
Yeah, you said right wing nationalism becoming big issue now, like around the world.
I mean, the Nazis weren't, despite what movies and games would have you think, the Nazis were not evil for the sake of being evil, right? They thought they were right.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand and see the warning signs. So I just want to caveat with that. That's the only reason I have it, right? I'm not endorsing the Nazi parties, as you should probably know anyway. But just to give you an idea, like it's got me thinking with the Japanese thing. So how he saw them. There's a passage in Mein Kampf from talking about it. I thought it might give obviously a bit of clarity to this. So I'll just read it here. So he says, in a few decades, for example, the entire east of Asia will possess a culture whose ultimate foundation will be Hellenic spirit and Germanic technology, just as much as in Europe. Only in the outward form, in part at least, will bear the features of Asiatic character. It is not true, as some people think, that Japan adds European technology to its culture. No. European science and technology are trimmed with Japanese characteristics. The foundation of actual life is no longer the special Japanese culture, although it determines the color of life, because outwardly, in consequence of its inner difference, it is more conspicuous to the Europeans. But the gigantic scientific, technical achievements of Europe and America, that is, of Aryan peoples. Only on the basis of these achievements can the Orient follow general human progress. They furnish the basis of the struggle for daily bread, create weapons and implements for it, and only the outward form is gradually adapted to Japanese character. If beginning today, all further Aryan influence on Japan should stop, assuming that Europe and America should perish, Japan's present rise in science and technology might continue for a short time, but even in a few years, the well would dry up. The Japanese special character would gain, but the present culture would freeze and sink back into the slumber from which it was awakened 7 decades ago by the wave of Aryan culture. So in other words, you're sitting there and it's like, he talked about other Asian cultures and stuff like Indians and things like that, saying, oh, they were great civilizations, but it was a result of earlier Aryan influence. You know what I mean? Like he couldn't he had to take credit for it somewhere. Yeah. It's just reading it, like a lot of it's waffle, a lot of the book is waffle.
It is, he's just self-inserting Aryan stuff into things like, well, no, mate, it didn't happen that way,
You're like, fuck it. I just thought, just after, they could not have coexisted. They would not have coexisted afterwards, but.
Well, as you said, just reading that, like when you read the book as well, it's like, you just think, how do people get encaptured by his rhetoric sometimes? Like some of the stuff he goes on about, you're just like, this sounds like a madman.
Yeah. I mean, look, if we've spoken about it's conditions of, and this is why this is going to be a long episode, right?
Yeah.
But it's the conditions of.
I know the times.
When he came to power and the Versailles Treaty and the.
He became a martyr too by being locked up too.
Yeah,
so just kind of
the Great Depression, and then suddenly you've got Germany's poor, and you're pushed into oblivion. You've got someone sitting there like make Germany great again, basically.
Yeah.
And the youth, it's. We spoke about Starship Troopers. Pretty much, say Paul Verhoeven made a movie. That Starship Troopers was a movie about 1935 Germany, basically. Yeah, let's all join, and this is great. Before we knew we were bad, kind of thing. And
then the only people that are suffering like the 1%ers. So who gives? We're not suffering anymore. So don't worry about them. They can just go away.
Human nature until it affects you personally. Yeah, you really give a shit.
Nah, as long as you're prospering, you don't give. Yeah, no one really cares, right? So.
Yeah, we should probably get back to the game. Sorry about that.
Bit of a side tangent, but that's part. Definitely important to set the tone and what See, it's what's cool about this game, yeah, because it's using the influence from the history of what was going on at the time, then also put foreshadowing or like forecasting what they think would happen under these conditions and circumstances going forward. So we get to the part two where they're trying to get through the checkpoints, isn't it? With the grandparents, and what's really cool is that you really feel like the control and dystopian feel of the world itself, with the different checkpoints and the guards and the towers and the.
You have the papers?
Yeah, where's the papers? Yes, yeah, the iconic where's the papers. But yeah, I think the first scene where you really see like the sadistic, stereotypical Nazi nature is when you're on the train when with Blazkowicz and Anya get on the train, and he's getting coffee for her, and they got the tray, and that's when we first meet. What was her name?
Frau Engel, and like her. How would you describe him?
He's like a concubine in a way, isn't it? Like
almost.
Yeah, reverse concubine.
What's his booby? I think his name is.
Booby, yeah.
I don't know if that's a term of endearment or whatnot, but that's what I remember.
Yeah, and you can kind of see him like playing like up to her and like showing. Very a bit flamboyant in a way.
Yeah, almost. Please, I don't want to be cancelled with this, but he almost is like a repressed homosexual. Is what I viewed him as. You know what I mean? Like he's.
Yeah, well, he's just trying to fit himself into this world, right? So he's
pretty
much.
He's
using his survival instincts to help better himself in a way, right? But then he's got he's that stereotypical like in his mid-20s, blonde hair, slick back.
Oh, he's got all the features.
He's got all the features that you want of the stereotypical pure Aryan. So, and then her to a certain degree, she's in you'd say like late 40s or something, early 50s.
Yeah,
they look of her, and then so you're carrying the tray. And then she's like, "Oh, come join me over here. Yeah, sit down." And then they're talking, and then she plays this little death game with him where she's dealing cards, and then you have to select what appeals to you more, like something like flowers or a bunny rabbit or something, or.
Yeah, I remember there's one with a spider and skulls, which would almost look like the Holocaust or something.
Yeah. And then it gets to the point where she pulls out the Luger and points at you and saying, if you don't select the right one, you're going to die, basically. And you're just like, fuck, this is a bit freaky now. Like, and then you just find out it was a mind fuck the whole time. Like she's just messing you just for the lols, basically.
Yeah, she is fucking menacing.
And when she has her cackle and her laughing, it's so. And then she got like staring eyes like blankly, like you're like, holy crap! Like, yeah, she's just fucking one scary person. Like Jesus, you don't want to get on the wrong side of her.
Oh yeah,
that's done on purpose to kind of set the scene because she comes a very big character down the track in the game. So. But that scene, it's funny playing it again recently. I didn't say I forgot that scene, but I remember I remember this. Oh my god, I forgot about how creepy this was. Yeah. And that's when after that you survive that encounter, and then Blazkowicz takes the tea back and
gets his reward.
Yeah, gets his reward and gets the job done in another way. Yeah. So I was a bit like, on you, mate.
Get in there, son.
Yeah, on you. Yeah. It's like, yeah. That's when we later, when you were talking about earlier, when we wake up in Berlin, and that's when we see the Albert Speer inspired dome, and you're seeing the whole all the Nazi flags and propaganda all around the streets, and that's when we lead into where we're going when we're breaking into that prison to help escape some of the old resistance fighters and old generals from war people with Blazkowicz back in the day who've been stuck in prison there. So, but it's that's when the game really you get to see what this Marvel city of Berlin is in all its glory, and seeing all the Roman-inspired arches and pillars and buildings and the marble, and as I said earlier, like the tone and the feel of it, like they've really gone overboard in a way which is really good. Where you really feel dystopic.
Well, it's basically like the Nazi utopia now, isn't it?
Yeah, so you're seeing the Nazi utopia in their eyes on steroids in this ultimate. At the heart and center of it all, right? Where Berlin's the centerpiece world, the city of the world.
Germanica, basically.
Germanica,
It's got the People's Hall and but then you see it's like all the marvels of technology against all these like sort of Roman ancient kind of looking buildings. Obviously, as you say, we know he was obsessed with all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's like his dream, and
the juxtaposition of this old marble arches, and then also this ultra futuristic robots running around and mech machines.
Yeah, which is cool. And actually. Again, learning the events that led to the Nazis winning the war in this universe, it's established so Death's Head becomes like revered after winning the war because of his marvels of technology. He pretty much like sidelines Hitler.
Yeah.
But at this point, and as we see Hitler later on in the game, which again does a fantastic job of sort of portraying him, but Hitler at this point is old and decrepit and he's paranoid, and which he was at the end of his days. Anyway,
Yeah, well,
right?
he was pumped full of drugs as well, right? Yeah, he was struggling even towards like in the early 40s, let alone
he's surrounded by sycophants and yes men, and like he's just
he sleep till like 1 o'clock in the afternoon every day.
Oh yeah, I suppose he was a lazy bastard. He used to watch movies all night and like wake up at like midday or something.
Well, that's why like he missed was it the famous D-Day landings, right? Because he was asleep. Everyone was too afraid to wake him up because they needed his permission to get the Panzer tanks to reinforce down the coast. Wasn't it? Something stupid like that.
Yeah, it was, and as I say, they were scared to wake him up. And then I think when they initially told him, he's like, "Oh no, that wouldn't happen." Sort of thing. Fake news.
Yeah, fake news. Yeah. Wow, what a bell end.
Dickhead.
Yeah. Well, he always thought was it the Cataclysm, wasn't it?
Calais.
Calais, sorry. Yeah, he got attacked there. So
the old inflatable army over there.
Yeah,
that Patton was in charge of.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
because I think Patton was serving his.
Yeah, he was obsessed with Patton, wasn't he? Yeah, he was scared of him. Yeah,
but Patton was I think he was being punished for slapping someone with PTSD or something, and they sideline him, so they put him in charge of like an inflatable army or something.
Yeah.
I don't think he was too
great diversionary tactic. Yeah,
wasn't too happy about that. I don't think.
No, he was a bit egotistical, old Patton, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I guess So then we go into the prison, we break out the soldiers and go further onto there. But I guess the level that really stands out, I think, is probably is the best level in the game is when you go to concentration camp. When you're getting when you're getting what's the character's name? The
Seth Roth
out of what they call the diet. YouTube?
So the Dutch you should.
Yeah,
it's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, it's hard to pronounce. Yeah.
He's like a living member of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you break out him, and I just remember when you first go in there, you're on the trains with the people, right? You're going to the concentration camp, and then you see Frau Engel, and then
when the door opens, the light comes in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You come out, and then there's crying babies and stuff, and then she takes someone like passes the baby.
You see the prisoner handing it over, and she sort of holds it like
like holding a rat or something. Like,
she's like, what am I going to do with that? And obviously the door's got, what's happened to that baby.
And it's just gone off, and it goes off camera, or off screen basically. And you're like, I know where it's going to go.
The game actually like it shows a lot of balls like in doing what they're doing, because this is a real touchy subject, as we know. But to actually, it's almost like a simulation of you in a concentration camp. We talk about that start. We talk about like puts you inside the system and you're being filtered through, and you're wandering through. And I think the what's his name? Engel and Booby are there, and he's sort of like, oh, what about this one? And I think Frau Engel says something like, oh, he's too big, too expensive to feed. Almost in a sense like, so she's like, oh no, he could be useful lifting things, blah blah blah. It's like, oh, okay, all right. And then you get. I guess you get the tattoo on you.
You get branded,
but the rest of them are going to their death. Like it's that whole like you just it really shows that like what am I looking for? It's that filtering process, the systematic removal. It's like it's more than murder. It's
like herding cattle into the land of the slaughter or something.
And it just gets it like so right.
Oh, it nails it too.
Yeah.
Well, both you and me have been to concentration camps in Europe, and you've seen it firsthand. You see like I just remember vividly playing the game because you see the famous gates of the concentration camp when you go in there. It's exactly like the one I saw at Sachsenhausen, very similar the way it's designed, and you walk and you're like, holy shit, like as I said, once again, attention to detail in this game, like it really sets the tone and feel of what it would have been like going through those death camps. And it's like,
and there's a point where you sort of see, like, I think you look to the left in one point, you see like a prisoner getting the shit kicked out of him by about 3 guards and stuff, and you're hearing screams, and there's a doctor doing like experiments on people, like all this stuff that happened. Like he's probably after the doctor when he gets it, he's like a bit like he's real menacing. Yeah,
that's so the part where you and then you walk through, and then you see where the prisoners are kept in those what are they called, those huts, or what are they?
The bunks.
The bunks, sorry, and it's and I said earlier when I went in to see Sachsenhausen, and then you see those bunks exactly like the same as well, and you see like the really thinly laid hay like shelves and stuff, and it's all like herding cattle, livestock into the little den area, and there's like a barn,
and then the bathroom is like just all
it's
disgusting, and he flies flying around. It's like when I actually went to Auschwitz, Dachau as well. You just see them in the living quarters. It's just
and the game absolutely nails that part too, and as I said, like seeing it in real life, and then the game like really does it well, showcasing that. So
it's like it's. And I'll go on to in a minute. There's another game like Wolfenstein gets that thing of like the Nazis didn't just kill people; they erase cultures. It's like that whole
Dehumanization. Yeah.
dehumanize. It just nails it. Where like a lot of other games, there's another game, Call of Duty World at War, and I played it. And it was like one of the first games to bring in the concentration camp level, but it was so safe and so like it felt like a bit of a spit in the face in the sense where like you go in and it's sort of down to two lines and like, oh, I thought I knew what evil was, and then I saw this, and then you go into a concentration camp and it shows like a few dead bodies, and but the whole reason you're there is because so you're there to save your mate, and miraculously your mate survives, and then you save him, but it's sort of like you save in one of those sort of is it like a bullet time trope? You know in the games when they brought in those bullet time tropes?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's about to be killed by the Nazi opera group and Fuhrer, and you just save him in the nick of time, and like it's just like, oh, is that it? Like you've just it's a real safe, real hollow depiction.
It felt a bit Hollywood, did it?
Yeah. It did, and look, I can understand trying to play it safe. I can understand that, and maybe like Wolfenstein benefits because it's set in an alternate future or history.
Yeah,
but it still remains the same, right? It's the same attention to detail, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, so that's the next one we hit with the doctor, right? That's where you see like the dead bodies that get being piled in the furnaces, and and then the sadistic scientist, and he like injects you with something as well. And
he's like calling you an insect, and
it just depicts that stereotype of those Nazi scientists so well. Like it's so creepy, and you really feel like you're part of that T4 project where you just you're viewed as vermin and scum to the society, and they want to eradicate you. But then like it's one of those things. Yeah, you go through there, you get your Arnold Schwarzenegger on again, and you're like taking them all out and rescue. Sorry, what was his name again?
Seth Roth.
You had to go in there to get something to help him out. I think from memory to get something, like to release something. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, that's when the first time you get into that mech arm thing, and you go through that blasting things, and that's where you meet Frau Engel again. That's when you make her deformed at the end of it, when she's trying to execute you on the pikes.
Well, yeah, she finds you, and she's not only going to assassinate, she's not only going to execute you, but she's going to execute everyone from your block, kind of thing.
Yeah, as a punishment. Yeah, because you're trying to escape, right? You're trying to uprising in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and just at the right time, it releases, and then
Deus Ex Machina moments.
That's what we came for, right?
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, he's got more lives than cats, bloody old Blazkowicz, hasn't he?
He does.
Keep
doing
it.
Well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, I know. No, wait for the second game. Jesus. But yeah, I guess too. Like, it's really cool to see it touching. Like, it uses World War II references, but then like puts them on steroids and stuff like like the U-boats and the blimps and different vehicles and like the Tiger tanks and the creatures and stuff. I really like that part of it when it does that. It showcases that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I think the interesting thing and the way it plays on this whole occult thing and ancient societies and the Nazis finding that technology. So like Wolfenstein to me, it's like the world. If the Nazis found this technology, it's imagining that and that this is what happens. Like just to talk to you about so I know we've mentioned them a couple of times before, but that you should is obviously the ancient society in this game. So just looking at it, so it actually that you should actually roughly translate to unique knowledge in Hebrew. So basically, secret society based on Judaism, which has been around for centuries. Seth Roth actually established that there's hundreds of vaults around the world containing their inventions. They include like anti-gravity, energy weapons, mind control devices. So in this world, like Nazis found some of these vaults and have reverse engineered it. Hence, Death's Head's rise. Hence, the turning of the tide of the war. But there's the good talking point. The good talking point here, I think, is like the Nazis. Again, we were going back to like History Channel at 3:00 in the morning, but it's well documented that they had like a fascination with the occult, like ancient civilizations, lost technology. Look, I think the more and more the Allies closed in, the little bit more desperate it got. But like a lot of this was driven by pseudoscience and propaganda to support racial ideology. So did you ever hear of like the Anunnaki?
Don't think so. No.
So basically, this was a obviously you're aware that like Himmler was sort of he was into the occult. He was sort of easily led.
Yeah.
But the Anunnaki were actually founded in 1935 to basically find evidence that Germans or Aryans were the master race. It was to sort of back up all of Hitler's racial ideals, that sort of thing. That attention to detail. So to kind of justify the expansionism and anti-Semitic rhetoric.
Yeah, to like confirm it all and stuff. Yeah, but have put like proper research and scientific
Yeah,
practices behind it. Yeah.
yeah. I was watching like I was watching a documentary because look, at the time, as we already established, there was a lot of talk around eugenics and racial hygiene and a lot of this stuff. Like, so they were saying, "Oh, it's all backed by science," when it wasn't. It was just they were taking bits from here, they were taking bits from here.
Very convenient.
They're taking bits from Darwin, and oh yeah, well we can't coexist, just that shit. But they sort of Himmler was like fascinated by natural sciences, history, Nordic mythology, all that sort of shit. As I say, he was like very easily seduced to fantastical theories. I think I was watching something that even suggested he was like he genuinely believed he was a reincarnation of a German king by the name of Heinrich in the Middle Ages.
You gotta laugh at it, don't you? Like,
and
it's just crazy that people like this had so much power like that. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, as you know, like the swastika symbol was sort of.
Oh, they stole it from, was it Hinduism, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, it had been around for 10,000 years and it symbolizes the sun, and, they take some meaning from, the birth in you or some shit, I don't know. The SS skull rings were sort of modeled off like Teutonic Knights and all that kind of shit. So it's like
Well, the skulls were actually before the Nazis, though. That was in World War One.
Yeah, but I think the skull rings they used the symbology on the rings from like, it was all goes back to like the Teutonic age and shit like that. Some of the words he put on there, But there's a documentary, so like this Anunnaki that they created went on archaeological expeditions to places like Tibet because there was belief that the secret to the Aryan race lied in an ancient Indo-European people or something, similar to what we were reading before, like in Mein Kampf. But so they were looking for relics, but they're also like looking for physical similarities of the local population and like German people. So there's footage of them actually like measuring feet, noses, arms, like pulling teeth out and shit like that. Like on video, it's really fucked up. But
it would be, yeah.
But then they needless to say, they didn't find anything. but like,
it's one big massive cope, isn't it? It's just like they're trying to find any reason just to justify like this existence,
pretty much
from all over the world. Yeah,
pretty much. Like when the war started, obviously like I don't know if have you seen Monuments Men?
Don't think so.
Yeah,
no.
Not the greatest movie of all time, but it was based on a true thing. So like. The Anunnaki actually, when the front line was going and, obviously when the war started proper in like 1939, they were sort of tasked with like going into, places like Poland, France, Austria, that sort of thing, taking relics and stuff and bringing them back to some sort of Führer museum. And they were saying, it's the Führer museum. And yeah, they were looking for relics and stuff that suggested, they were finding anything to suggest that the Germans were a great people. But as you know, as you say, the ancient German tribes were quite primitive. So they were like copper plates and stuff like, which is like, so in the end, it was like, we'll start. They started looking into like mythology and the tale of like Atlantis and stuff.
Yeah.
So like, where the Aryans came from there, and the Aryan, it was a utopia, but it was an ancient, powerful civilization that sank beneath due to its own hubris. So a bit like, like Numenor in Tolkien's writings in like Lord of the Rings in like Middle Earth.
Sounds a bit like Black Panther, Wakanda or something.
Yeah. But he's like, apparently like, in Nazi pseudo history, it was like, it was a once pure, perfect society that was wiped out by breeding with inferior lower races. That sort of thing.
It's funny, like when you're talking about that, because you always hear, obviously we've done our own research, a lot of other things, but it's always the consensus like, Nazis were evil. They wanted, the German race to be superior, but no one really knows all this other behind this. Like they actually believed all this weird paranormal sci-fi, like weird stuff. It
was conjecture, right? Like to sort of to reinforce the party line and.
But it went down this far. Like, there's this weird rabbit hole. Like it's
it gets weirder than this, mate.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, but no one really talks about that. Like, it's all this pure, like the battles and like, how he got to power and the paramilitary group and the SS, the SA, stuff like that. But you never hear about all this other stuff they were going down. Like, it's just so bizarre. Yeah,
it was, and like the that's why it's like we talk like we're getting off topic, but it's there's a reason I bring this, because the Dutch issued technology in this world, and then in our world. Yes, the Germans were looking at that sort of stuff, but it was more from a point of to back up their ideology, essentially. There's even something. The reason I said there was a thing, ancient weaponry and stuff. You mentioned Patton before. It's a story like I was saying. Like, did you like there's like a spear of destiny or the spear of Longinus in Vienna. So supposedly the story goes that this store was around. This spear was around at the time of like Jesus' crucifixion, and the Roman soldier that put it into the side of Jesus was like a captain, and he had cataracts, and then the blood went into his eye and cured his eyes or something like that. And then he instantly like converted and then took that spear around every battle and it protected him and ensured he won. And like Hitler was fucking obsessed with it. And he's like, oh, this will lead me to greatness and this will lead me to victory, which obviously, spoiler alert, didn't.
Yeah.
but like supposedly, so he like stored it in Nuremberg because Nuremberg was like, whilst we said like Berlin was like the brains of the Reich.
Well, he was from down that south way.
Nuremberg was like the heart, or like, you know.
Oh, that's where the movement started, right?
Yeah. Triumph of the World, the rallies and the.
That's what we called the push, wasn't it? The Munich.
Yeah, the Beer Hall Putsch.
Beer Hall,
23, yeah. But supposedly, you mentioned Patton before. Supposedly, Patton was aware of this, and he was fucking obsessed with it. Like at the end of the war, a report got to him, and it mentioned this, and he like stopped an attack because you know, and he was like obsessed with like.
It's kind of like a holy grail in a way, isn't it? Yeah.
Sort of, yeah. They were looking for the Holy Grail too.
Yeah, I know, I've heard of that, yeah.
Again, History Channel at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
But yeah, Patton was supposedly like captivated by this and like knew about it because I think he saw himself as some sort of a Christian defender or something. You probably know more about that than I would, but yeah, and there was a massive blow up. He wanted to, at the end of the war, he wanted to take it back to the US, and like it was only like Eisenhower to step in. There's a massive blow up between the two of them or something.
Yeah,
like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I think Eisenhower's like, mate, just stay on target.
Yeah. I think the only thing that really made it go back to Vienna was, I guess, Patton died in a car crash in.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, 1946, I think it was, or
I think it was 1945.
Yeah,
imagine surviving the war and dying in a car crash.
Yeah, you'd be just. Yeah, how disappointing for him. Like, this is in general, like, there's this warrior, and you're like, oh, he didn't go out in a blaze of glory, he just had a car accident.
Maybe the spear had something to do with it.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to find it first, you know?
You want to drop the X-Files thing in here now?
Yeah, probably.
Sorry, on that side note.
The technology, yes.
Yeah. No, I guess back to the game.
Yeah. As you were saying, so with the technology was that I can't pronounce it. That you should. Yeah, the diet you should. Yeah, I've got to say it 3 times to get it stuck in my head. Yeah, the diet you should. Like I think a bit further on is when you first kind of because you go on that scouting mission to go find it, right? So in that location towards the.
It's exactly the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, and you got the elevator, I remember, from it, and then you get that big gold ball thing, and that's when you use it later on the. Yeah,
it's a. Spindler or
Spindler. You use it as Gibraltar. Spindler, yes. The Gibraltar, the bridge, I think it is.
Gibraltar, but yeah. That's a cool thing. That's like a mega structure. It's like goes straight from Europe to the African front line.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Crazy.
But that scene was, remember, he's on the train line, and then that the big balls expands and just destroys half the bridge, and things falling down, and then you have to go through and mow out all the Nazis, and I think you had to grab something. It's like some code or something from memory.
Codes to then go to space.
Yeah. Well, just before we go into outer space, like what's cool when you see the trailer to the game for the first one, it shows you like history from like 1945 to like 1960, where you're seeing like, the Nazis conquer the moon, have the Nazi flag, and he's doing like the Sieg Heil, the salute and stuff like that. Yeah, it's always that part stuck with me because then you end up going there eventually, right? Yeah. Now that's a really cool mission because that's what you steal one of the general's uniforms, I think it is.
Yeah, you've got to supposedly be that general. I don't know how when you're some sort of internationally wanted terrorist like Vijay Blazkowicz that's single-handedly taking on the Nazi regime can dress in an officer's.
No, well, way you go.
I thought the Nazis were a bit more sophisticated than that, but obviously not.
Clearly, he had his papers. Clearly, yeah. But yeah, no, it's cool when you go to the moon base as well, and you're seeing once again like the atmosphere, right? You went in the moon station, you're seeing like massive Nazi flag and the different, like they built like this massive space station and in between space stations for all transport to go through it. And yeah, it just shows like this Nazi regime on steroids, just controlling and conquering things everywhere.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. And again, with this game, it leads you to that point of like the attention to detail in the sense you start looking at the Nazi, I guess the space race. They were really the first ones to start it with the V2 rockets. That was sort of influential in really technology get to the moon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was a research center, Peenemünde, I think, which von Braun Werner von Braun, who had actually gone over to he was really looking into it, but he went over to the US obviously in Operation Paperclip after the war. They just forgot about everything he'd done, all the forced labor he used. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
He can help us in the Cold War and help us get to space. I think he even appeared with like Walt Disney on TV or something. But
yeah, that's right.
I don't think it's any secret that Walt Disney was a big anti-Semite as well.
Yeah,
was he?
so probably only half backed him, right?
Probably.
Yeah.
So obviously in this universe, they're still in, these scientists are still in Nazi Germany. So it's absolutely correct. They probably would have got there. I don't know if they would have got to, I guess, Venus, as we see a little bit later in the series, but who knows?
Yeah, we're innovators, so you never know.
Yeah.
So we get to the point then, so that he goes to the moon. He gets he needs a key code, I think, from memory. Then he needs to return. Then he gets that key code, comes back to Earth, but then he finds out that Angle has attacked the Resistance base.
Yes.
We get back down there, and you're seeing all like the Resistance members being killed and captured, and
he needs to get their launch codes for nuclear weapons to fire at
That's right,
Death's compound.
That's right.
They're keeping them on the moon, which is actually probably
Smart,
a good idea.
yeah.
But obviously not when Blazkowicz is around.
Oh, well, when you got Arnie Schwarzenegger reincarnated, bad idea,
Bad idea. Nowhere safe.
Well, they say that you can nowhere on Earth you can hide. Well, even in space they can't hide. So he finds them. We get to that place, then they liberate, because then he goes the Death's Head lair, liberates them all, and that's when Blazkowicz travels to the top of the tower where Death's Head's workshop is located. Inside, Death's Head reveals that Blazkowicz possesses the preserved brain of the soldier that Blazkowicz had to kill. So that's when you find out if it's Fergus. Right. Yeah. So it is really just depressing and sad seeing that comrade when he's like your fellow soldier as this robot, like a piece of his brain and skull in that mech suit, and then you finally, when you defeat it, you get to a point where you got to stun it, and then you can take out the brain, and he's like, just please put me out of my misery, please just kill me, I just want to die. And then he's like, it salutes him, and then you end up destroying it.
Even before and Death's Head's he's making some this is his piece de resistance, and he's sort of a human brain amalgamated with the efficiency and obedience of the machine. This is perfection, and that sort of thing.
My greatest creation.
That's
mad
that's what it's all been for.
It's like he's Frankenstein,
pretty
isn't
much.
it? It's his Frankenstein. So But then, once
Frankenstein's monster.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's always those misconceptions.
People
get
pissed off with that.
Yeah, it's like Luke, I'm your father. It's actually not that. It's like, no, Luke, I am your father.
That's it.
Yes, same thing. But so we get to that point, and that's where the final boss, Death's Head, is your final bad boss to get.
That's
the ultimate one. I'm playing this game again. I was playing on easy mode because I wanted to beat the game as quickly as possible. It took me freaking 8 times to beat. It was so frustrating. It was so there's one point where you got to get the laser gun, cut the section out, then to go to launch to fire on the Zeppelins on each side. Then because he's using lightning as a shield to block him for any laser attacks from whatever. So you got to destroy those so that it blocks the shield, and then it collapses into the lower level. Yeah, and then you got to think you've done. Then you got to. Then what I found frustrating is that because then you go downstairs and you just got to continue mowing him basically and hide and duck and mow. But then he keeps destroying stuff, and then the fire starts popping up left, right, and center. So then you got to do it as quickly as possible. Then he kills you over and over again. The issue is you go back to that start period again. Then you got to get all the weapons again, all the armor, all this. Okay, down again. And he's like, oh fuck! It was 8 times I did it. It was so frustrating. But it was great when I finally got to him on the 8th time, destroyed him, killed him, and then at the end there, his last trick, wasn't it? Because you pull him out of the mech suit, and then he has a grenade there, and then blows himself up, and then you assume that Blazkowicz dies with him, but. Yeah.
It's a silly assumption to make.
I can't believe they made that rookie error and assumed he was dead. They're not our Blazkowicz.
And that takes us to the end of the events of New Order.
It does, yeah. That's where we. So, I guess before we go to the New Colossus part 2 of the game, I think we should talk about some of the dystopian themes to the first game, where we explore. You get that real totalitarian control and surveillance, where we talked earlier in the games where you're walking through, you're seeing cameras everywhere, you're seeing those drones flying around. This is meant to be the Nazis' ultimate utopia, right, in Berlin, but everywhere there's checkpoints, there's soldiers walking around. There's you don't really see civilians around, do you? No, it's all controlled, all the propaganda on the wall and the do your thing for the Reich, and it really encapsulates that, and I really appreciated the attention to details of that.
Yeah, there's a bit where you see the CCTV footage and the cameras looking at the car coming out of the prison, and it seems like a real nod to 1984. Oh, it does.
Yeah. I think that was definitely an inspiration to the game. Yeah, things like 1984's got fingerprints in every bloody dystopian thing, right?
That's the daddy of it all.
It is. Yeah. And I guess too, it's. Well, I guess when we go into I found it a bit stupid in the game as well. the resistance base is in Berlin, and it's in this like underground area where because one mission we steal a helicopter from like this ultra futuristic helicopter that's like meant to be like the centerpiece of brilliance for them, and then they manage to fly it in downtown Berlin underground. Like, how did they not know where to go? How did they only discover it later on? I won't question the plot.
Yeah, that's what you established. Don't question the plot.
Oh, that's my mistake. But yeah, but yeah, like you really see them like beating out all forms of resistance, all any counterculture, any counter revolution. It's all been squashed.
Well, it really, I feel like on the resistance, it makes that point of like, it really does a good job of developing the characters who are actually in the resistance, but you're all sitting there as like, well, what are you actually? Look, I know what you're fighting for, but why do you keep doing it? Like, it's this never ending. This is never ending battle, and there's some really cool characters in there as well. You know?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like it's kind of like a resistance against hopeless odds in a way, right?
Well, yeah, we just can't, like, assimilating would be failure. We just can't do that. We can't give you the satisfaction, you know?
It kind of reminds me a bit. I know, obviously, that that's changed, but it has that feeling of, remember that final mission in Halo Reach where you're it's like that last stand. It has that kind of feel to it where you keep mowing down all the aliens, but then they just keep coming and coming and coming. It has that feel to it where why you imagine the characters would question like, are we gonna? What's the point of keep fighting on? Like, you'd have that self doubt.
Yeah, well, they don't only control the world, but they control space, they control everything. It just seems so pointless.
Yeah, you can't. No matter where you can't hide, you can't fight back. Like, you can fight back, but like only certain areas and stuff. Like it feels like you're just against the tide constantly.
Yeah, and there's some cool, like, look, one of the characters I really liked in there was Klaus, you know, the ex-Nazi.
Yeah, he was a great character.
Yeah, he was a great character. Like, it's established that I think his wife and son died. His son died because he had a club foot, and he was obviously taken off to the T4 project and killed, but he was trying to hide it. I think his wife tried to stop them, and she got a bullet because of it. So, like, that's why he had nothing to live with, so he sort of joined the resistance. But both good and bad in the sense, like, it really hits home that message of, like, people will only do something when it affects them personally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's that whole, like, so if that didn't happen, you'd obviously just go along. It's not affecting me. Who cares? Kind of thing. Like, he's a good character, but I think that's what the game's pushing. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What like the game does too is like that section 2, they're at the concentration camp, and then you see the Nazi soldiers having a picnic on the side, and the juxtaposition of like then behind it is this concentration camp going where people are being slaughtered and tortured and exterminated, and it kind of it invokes that. I remember when I went to I was in I said you went to Dachau, I went to Sachsenhausen, and my tour guide was telling me about Rudolf Hoss, the architect, he was like the in charge of Auschwitz concentration camp, the most infamous death camp. So, and she was saying how the family would have they had like their backyard, and she have flowers and picnics and have family over and take them for swims and things like that. But then 20 meters down the road, people were being slaughtered and destroyed, and apparently even the wife would use the ashes of the burnt victims as fertilizer for the garden,
like fully knowing, and
it had that idyllic like juxtaposition of this beautiful perfect Aryan family living this beautiful lifestyle, exploiting, using, I think they had like in German, they had Jewish house slaves working on the house in this beautiful place, but then down the road is this death camp. Like it's just so creepy and so like it's like it's that comparison with these dystopian societies where it's at the guise of this perfection, but underneath is this rotten, disturbing core to it.
Yeah, it's built on death and destruction and
suffering of other people to get to that point. Yeah, so. Yeah, the first game really emphasizes that, because this is the heart of Nazi Germany, of the Nazi Empire is Europe. So you're seeing firsthand 15 years of pure dominance and control of it, and how they have just brutalized everything to this point, and they're so desensitized from it. Yeah, the soldiers are having a picnic while people are being slaughtered in the background.
It's just normal.
It's just normal. Yeah. It's just part of the system, right? So
yeah, it's very confronting.
I think another thing too, what it does well too, with it shows that the environment's not even a factor to it, right? So you're seeing polluted skies, you're seeing discarded ruins of cities and stuff. They don't care about that. It's all about that pure Aryan superiority, about controlling the world the way they see fit, and they don't care about reinventing things in certain ways. It's all about this using the resources of the earth and everything around it for their objectives, and their pure, like, Berlin's this Marvel city, but then everything else has got chaos and destruction behind it, right? So
it's almost like there's no price given to the environment.
No.
It's got no worth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It serves no purpose, so why bother about it? So
yeah,
it definitely like encapsulate that the game as well. So and I guess one more final point, like, on the dystopian themes of it too, is just the sacrifices that they do to people. Like, there's no dehumanization of it. Like, they just kill people without even thinking twice about it. It's just that pure brutality of it. It's just, you really feel like this like the real decay of the society about it, like the world that they've created. It's just, unless you're in that inner circle that what they perceive as the good people, yeah, you're not going to survive. It'd be so depressing and so, like, downtrodden, right? Like, it just, yeah, it's definitely a place I wouldn't want to live in.
Definitely not.
No. Well, before we want to go into the new Colossus, right? So I think we'll wrap it up this for part one, the episode. So
yeah.
Because we can go on. We're already an hour and a half almost into this one, so I think so we'll stop it here for now. So as always, guys, catch us on our social media page at Dystopedia Pod, or you can also send us an email at info@dystopediapodcast.com. Please rate us on your favorite Spotify or your Apple or whatever podcast platform you get us from, and we'll catch you for part two. So stay tuned.
See you guys.
Bye.